Battleground was not just another post-war Hollywood picture. It was a declaration of cinematic war, fought not on the frozen fields of Belgium, but in the lavish offices of Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer. What you see on screen, a tale of gritty heroism and brotherhood, masked a production so volatile it nearly collapsed before a single frame was shot. We are talking about legendary studio feuds that threatened careers, actors pushed to their physical breaking point, and a script so controversial it was labeled un-American. This is not just a story of a movie, it is the story of a battle. Today, we are storming the production bunker to reveal the truth. Get ready for 20 weird facts about Battleground that will change how you see this classic forever. And stick around to the end for a bonus fact about the film's sound that is so secret it was buried for decades. Now, hit that subscribe button and let's march into the chaos. Number 20, the studio war that erupted behind the scenes. This was not just a movie about a battle, it was a battle to get the movie made. The conflict erupted between Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer's two titans, studio head Louis B. Mayer and production chief Dor Sherry. Mayer, the old-school mogul who built Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer on glamorous musicals and star-driven romances, loathed the Battleground script. He saw it as a bleak, depressing, and unprofitable disaster. No stars, no leading lady, no happy ending. He reportedly screamed during meetings. He declared it would ruin the studio. Sherry, the visionary new guard, fought back with ferocity. He saw it as a powerful, authentic story that needed to be told. The arguments were brutal, with Sherry eventually threatening to quit if the film was not greenlit. What audiences did not know was that the fight for the 101st Airborne on screen was nothing compared to the war being waged for its soul in the executive suite. Mayer only relented after a bitter, drawn-out power struggle that left the studio fractured. Number 19, the casting controversy that defied Hollywood formula. Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer's formula was simple. Big stars, glamorous settings, and a romantic subplot. Battleground shattered all of it. The most controversial decision was the deliberate exclusion of a leading lady. In 1949, this was unheard of for a major studio production. Mayer's executives argued passionately that a female character was essential for box office appeal, a narrative anchor for the audience. Dor Sherry and director William A. Wellman stood their ground. They insisted the story's power came from its exclusive focus on the male bond between soldiers. It was not a war story with romance, it was a war story about soldiers. This decision sent shockwaves through the industry. Trade papers questioned Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer's sanity. It was not just a casting choice, it was a revolutionary statement that a film's emotional core could be forged entirely in the mud and blood of combat, a gamble that could have bankrupted the picture and careers. Number 18, the brutal conditions that made the set a winter hellhole. The actors were not just acting cold, they were freezing. To create the wintry landscape of the Ardennes forest, the production team turned the sound stages into a frigid nightmare. They used industrial fans to whip up gale force winds and dumped tons of salt and gypsum to simulate snow and mud. The temperature on set plummeted. Actors like Van Johnson and John Hodiak spent 12-hour days drenched in freezing water, their uniforms caked in a mixture that chafed their skin raw. James Whitmore recalled how the salt would get in their eyes, making it impossible to see, while the cold was so penetrating that crew members wore heavy coats and gloves just to operate the cameras. It was not a simulated environment, it was a carefully engineered tundra. The misery you see on screen is often genuine, a testament to a cast pushed to their physical limits for the sake of authenticity. Number 17. The dangerous practical effects that nearly killed the cast. Before computer-generated imagery, filmmakers had to create chaos for real. For Battleground, this meant using live explosives and artillery simulators inches from the actors. Director William A. Wellman, a former fighter pilot with a no-nonsense approach, demanded visceral realism. Special effects crews detonated squibs and mortar hits with terrifying proximity to the performers. In one scene, an explosion was miscalculated, sending shrapnel flying perilously close to Ricardo Montalbán. The actors were not given earplugs, so the concussive blasts were deafening and disorienting. What audiences see as thrilling action was, for the cast, a daily exercise in controlled terror. It was not acting, it was survival. Each take carried the real risk of injury, creating a palpable sense of danger that no amount of performance could fake. The dailies were often reviewed, with the studio holding its breath, praying no one had been hurt. Number 16. The un-American accusations that rocked the production. In the post-war Red Scare era, patriotism was a litmus test in Hollywood. Battleground's unflinching portrayal of fear, doubt, and exhaustion among American soldiers was seen by some as borderline subversive. The film did not present its heroes as flawless, square-jawed killing machines. It showed them complaining, questioning their orders, and grappling with the very real possibility of death. A powerful columnist, writing under a pseudonym, attacked the film before its release, calling it a slap in the face to every American who served. The accusation was that by showing the grit and grime instead of just glory, the film was doing the work of enemy propagandists. It was not a movie, it was a political statement. Dore Sherry and the filmmakers had to mount a vigorous defense, arguing that true patriotism meant honoring the soldier's entire experience, not just the heroic highlights. The controversy threatened to torpedo the film's reputation before a single ticket was sold. Number 15, Van Johnson's behind-the-scenes power play. Van Johnson was Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer's golden boy, the wholesome all-American star who could do no wrong. His presence in Battleground was crucial to getting the film made, but he used that power to his advantage. Johnson, aware that he was the film's only top-billed star, made demands on the set. He reportedly clashed with director William A. Wellman over the intensity of the conditions, arguing for more breaks and less time in the manufactured snow. More significantly, he used his leverage to protect his image. He was insistent that his character, Private Hawley, maintain a certain level of charm and comic relief, resisting moments that made him appear too weak or cowardly. It was not just an actor playing a part, it was a star managing his brand. This created tension with the ensemble-focused vision of the film, where no single man was more important than the unit. Johnson's star power was both a blessing and a source of on-set friction. Number 14. The Academy Award-winning script that was rejected everywhere. Before it won the Academy Award for Best Original Screenplay, Robert Pirosh's script for Battleground was a pariah. Pirosh, a veteran of the Battle of the Bulge, poured his own experiences into the screenplay, capturing the authentic dialogue and grim reality of combat. But Hollywood studios hated it. They found it too bleak, too talky, and too focused on the mundane suffering of war. One after another, they passed. The script was not just rejected, it was actively scorned for its refusal to conform to the gung-ho war movie formula. Pirosh was told to add a love story, to make the heroes more overtly heroic, to punch it up. He refused. He was not writing a war fantasy, he was writing a war memoir. His steadfastness paid off when the script finally landed on Dore Sherry's desk, who recognized its raw power. What audiences did not know was that the very words that won an Oscar were once considered worthless by every other studio in town. Number 13, the military's initial reluctance to cooperate. You would think the United States military would jump at the chance to support a film about American heroes. Not initially. When the producers of Battleground approached the War Department, now the Department of Defense, for assistance, they met with resistance. Military officials, who had grown accustomed to approving more sanitized, propaganda-style films during the war, were deeply uncomfortable with Pirosh's script. They objected to the soldiers' griping, the depictions of fear, and the overall lack of rah-rah patriotism. They worried it would hurt recruitment and morale. It was not the heroic narrative they wanted to project. The filmmakers had to fight to convince them that the film's ultimate message was one of profound respect for the common soldier's endurance. They argued that showing the truth of their hardship was the highest form of honor. The military's eventual, albeit cautious, cooperation was a hard-won battle, proving that even in 1949, the line between cinematic art and propaganda was fiercely contested. Number 12. The casting of Ricardo Montalbán and Hollywood's ethnic ambiguity. Ricardo Montalbán's performance as Private Rodriguez is memorable, but his casting reveals a classic, problematic Hollywood practice. Rodriguez is meant to be a typical American soldier, but his surname suggests a specific ethnicity. However, the film makes almost no reference to his heritage. This was by design. In the golden age of Hollywood, studios often cast actors of color in roles that were ethnically vague, allowing them to be read as white by mainstream audiences while still adding a touch of exoticism to the ensemble. Montalbán, a Mexican-born actor, was handsome and talented, but was rarely cast in explicitly Latino roles. Instead, he was used as a type. His presence in Battleground was not a statement of multiculturalism. It was a product of a system that preferred to erase specific cultural identities rather than portray them authentically. It was not just casting, it was a subtle form of cultural assimilation playing out on the big screen. Number 11, the Forgotten Soldiers controversy. Battleground focuses specifically on the experiences of the 100 First Airborne at the Siege of Bastogne. While this made for a tight, compelling narrative, it unintentionally sparked a quiet controversy among veterans of other units, soldiers who fought in other pivotal, yet less famous battles of the Bulge felt their contributions were being overshadowed. The film's massive success cemented Bastogne and the Battered Bastards in the public consciousness as a definitive symbol of the entire campaign. What audiences did not know was that behind the scenes, some veterans groups wrote letters to the studio expressing their disappointment. They felt the film's laser focus, while artistically valid, created a skewed historical memory. It was not a major public scandal, but it was a poignant reminder that for every story told on screen, there are countless others that remain in the shadows. The film's cultural impact, while positive, also had the unintended consequence of simplifying a vastly complex historical event. Number 10, the on-set feud between method and tradition. The set of Battleground was a pressure cooker, and a simmering feud between two of its stars nearly boiled over. John Hodiak, a seasoned traditional actor, and James Whitmore, making his film debut and fresh from the method-influenced world of stage acting, had clashing approaches. Hodiak believed in hitting your marks, delivering your lines, and giving the director what he wanted. Whitmore, on the other hand, stayed in character between takes, trying to live the reality of the foxhole. This drove Hodiak crazy. Tensions erupted during the filming of the scene where his character, Jarrett, confronts Whitmore's Kinney. The argument felt too real. Wellman had to step in and separate them. Go ahead and like and subscribe, because we are just getting to the good stuff, and you won't believe the secrets hiding in the final 10 facts. The conflict was not just about acting styles, it was a clash of two different eras of Hollywood performance, happening in real time on that freezing soundstage. Number 9, the Academy Award-winning script was written in a creative frenzy. Robert Pirosh did not just write his masterpiece, he exercised it. Haunted by his memories of the Battle of the Bulge, Pirosh locked himself away in a small apartment to write the screenplay. He was not typing neat pages, he was channeling the chaos, fear, and dark humor he had lived through. Friends said he worked with an almost manic intensity, often for 18 hours a day, surrounded by maps and old photographs. The dialogue poured out of him, not as polished prose, but as the authentic, profane, and poetic chatter of soldiers he remembered. He was not inventing characters, he was resurrecting the ghosts of his squad. The famous egg scene, where a soldier treasures a single hard-boiled egg he has been saving, was based on a real incident. It was not a calculated move to write an Oscar-worthy script. It was a desperate personal act of catharsis. The Academy Award was not just for great writing, it was for the brutal honesty of a man who had to get the story out before it consumed him. Number 8. The black and white decision was another major fight. In the late 1940s, color was king. It was the future and a sign of a prestigious production. So when Dor Sherry announced Battleground would be shot in black and white, Louis B. Mayer nearly had another apoplectic fit. Mayer argued, logically from a business perspective, that a color war film would be more spectacular and profitable. But Sherry and director Wellman fought back with an artistic vision. They believed that black and white was not a limitation, it was a tool. It stripped away the distraction of color, forcing the audience to focus on the textures of the mud, the snow, the exhaustion on the actors' faces, and the stark graphic violence. It was not a cost-cutting measure, it was a deliberate aesthetic choice to enhance the film's gritty realism. The decision to shoot in monochrome was a final, defiant stand against the old guard's gloss, cementing the film's identity as something raw and real, not just another pretty picture. Number 7. The iconic egg scene was largely improvised. One of the most human and memorable moments in the entire film comes when a soldier lovingly produces a single, hard-boiled egg he has been saving. The scene perfectly captures the small, precious things men cling to in the midst of horror. While the concept was in Robert Pirosh's script, the magic of the I.O. performance was born on set. William A. Wellman was known for encouraging improvisation, and he let the actors play with the scene. The actor, a bit player named Richard Jekyll, did not just deliver his lines. He handled the egg with such tenderness and reverence that it became the emotional center of the sequence. The other actors' reactions were genuine. They were not just acting like they were coveting an egg, they were captivated by Jekyll's performance. It was not a moment manufactured by the script, it was a moment of pure cinematic discovery that erupted organically from the actor's commitment. This single scene elevated the entire film, proving that sometimes the most powerful special effects are simply human emotion. Number 6. The film's unexpected box office domination. Everyone at Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer, except for Dor Sherry and his team, predicted Battleground would be a box office bomb. Louis B. Mayer was already preparing his I Told You So speech. The film's bleak subject matter, lack of stars, and black and white photography were seen as three strikes against it. But when it premiered in December 1949, something remarkable happened. Audiences, many of whom were veterans or had loved ones who served, connected with the film's honesty on a profound level. Word of mouth exploded. People were not just seeing a movie, they were seeing their own experiences or the experiences of their fathers and husbands validated on the big screen. The film was not just a hit, it was a phenomenon. It became Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer's highest grossing film of the year and one of the most successful movies of 1949, period. It was not a commercial disaster, it was a commercial triumph that silenced the naysayers and proved that audiences were hungry for truth, not just fantasy. Number 5. James Whitmore's Oscar nomination for his first film role. Imagine making your film debut and landing an Academy Award nomination for Best Supporting Actor. That is exactly what happened to James Whitmore. A respected stage actor, Whitmore had never been in a movie before Battleground. His portrayal of the cynical, tobacco-chewing Sergeant Kinney was so authentic, so layered, and so powerful that it immediately put him on the map in Hollywood. What makes this even more shocking is the competition he was up against. The category was stacked with legendary character actors. Whitmore's nomination was not just a fluke, it was a testament to a raw, undeniable talent. He brought a stage actor's depth and a method actor's intensity to the role, creating a character who felt like he had been fighting wars his entire life. It was not just a great performance, it was one of the most stunning debuts in Hollywood history, a star-making turn that erupted from the frozen mud of Bastogne. Number 4, the use of real veterans as on-set consultants. The filmmakers of Battleground were obsessed with authenticity, and they went to extraordinary lengths to achieve it. Beyond Robert Pirosh's script, the production hired dozens of real veterans of the 101st Airborne to serve as technical consultants. These men were not just sitting in an office, they were on set every single day. They drilled the actors in the proper way to handle weapons, march, and communicate. They corrected the way they wore their uniforms and the way they spoke to each other. More importantly, they shared stories. Between takes, they would pull an actor aside and whisper, "This is what it felt like when the shells came in," or "This is what we thought about at night." The actors were not just learning their lines, they were absorbing the memories of the men who actually lived it. It was not just a movie set, it was a living history museum. The film's enduring power comes directly from this infusion of real-life experience, a bridge between the performers and the historical truth. Number 3, the legacy of the non-commissioned officer character. Before Battleground, the movie Marine or Soldier was often a clean-cut, all-American boy. The film changed that forever with its archetypes. James Whitmore's Sergeant Kinney, with his world-weary cynicism and perpetual chew of tobacco, essentially created the grizzled sergeant trope that we see in countless war films today, from Full Metal Jacket to Saving Private Ryan. He is not a sadist, but he is tough because he has to be. He is the anchor of reality for the younger men. This character type, the professional soldier who has seen it all and is just trying to get his men home alive, did not really exist in cinema with this level of complexity before. And what audiences did not know was that they were witnessing the birth of a new kind of war movie hero. Not the glamorous officer, but the hardened non-commissioned officer. It was not just a character, it was a blueprint for a generation of performances to come. Number 2, the film's direct influence on future generations of filmmakers. Battleground is more than just a classic. It is a foundational text for modern war cinema. Filmmakers like Steven Spielberg and Tom Hanks have repeatedly cited it as a primary inspiration for their work, most notably for the home box office series Band of Brothers. The DNA of Battleground is all over that production. The focus on the enlisted man's experience, the brutal winter conditions, the blend of horror and dark humor, and the deep respect for the bonds of brotherhood. Spielberg himself has called it one of the most honest war films ever made. He and Hanks studied its pacing, its character dynamics, and its refusal to glorify violence. It was not just an old movie they admired, it was a masterclass in how to tell a war story with integrity and emotional truth. The legacy of Battleground is not just in its own Oscar wins, it is in the decades of great war films that followed in its footsteps, standing on its shoulders to reach for that same level of authenticity. Number 1. The hidden anti-war message in the Why Are We Here speech. The most shocking fact about Battleground is that, beneath its patriotic surface, it contains a deeper questioning, almost anti-war soul. The pivotal scene comes when a battle-weary soldier asks, "What are we fighting for?" Another soldier, a former history teacher, delivers a speech about American ideals. But the power of the scene lies not in the answer, but in the question itself. In 1949, having a character in a uniform openly question the purpose of the war was audacious. It suggests that the ultimate sacrifice is not always clear-cut or noble in the moment. It is a moment of existential dread in the middle of a combat film. What audiences did not fully grasp was that this was the film's true thesis. It was not a propaganda piece, it was a lament. It honors the soldier by acknowledging the confusion and fear, not by pretending it does not exist. The film's greatest achievement is not showing us why they fought, but showing us the incredible courage it took to fight even when they did not know why. Bonus fact: Battleground pioneered a sound technique so revolutionary it is used in nearly every modern action film. The film's sound team, led by Douglas Shearer, was unsatisfied with the library of stock artillery explosions. They felt they were too clean, too generic. So they did something unprecedented. They went to a military proving ground and recorded the actual sound of 100 5mm howitzers and 81mm mortars being fired. But here is the secret. They did not just record the boom. They set up microphones at different distances, one close, one medium, one far away. In post-production, they layered these 3 distinct recordings on top of each other. The result was a sound with incredible depth and realism, the sharp crack of the initial blast, followed by the deeper roar, and then the distant, rumbling echo. This layered sound technique, which creates a 3-dimensional audio experience, was born on the sound stages of Battleground. It was not just sound effects, it was the invention of modern cinematic sound design. Looking back, Battleground is more than just a well-made war film. It is a monument to a pivotal moment in Hollywood history, when the old guard of glossy escapism was challenged by a new wave of gritty realism. Its legacy is not just in the awards it won or the money it made, but in the way it forever changed our relationship with the war film. It taught us that the greatest honor we can give our soldiers is to tell their stories honestly, the fear, the cold, the laughter, and the doubt. It proved that a movie does not need to be glamorous to be beautiful, and that the most profound truths are often found in the mud. What is your favorite classic war movie, and did you know any of these facts? Debate with your fellow film buffs in the comments below. Thanks for watching. Stay cinematic and keep watching the skies.